And finally, we have the vascular seed plants. The the main reproductive structure is the diploid seed, the already fertilized embryo that's inside of a hard protective coat, including the very nutritious endosperm, which is going to feed the embryo until the conditions are right for germination. So here we've got a little video showing germination of a seed into a seedling. So that's called germination. Okay. Oh, hello. Yeah. All right. There are two main groups of vascular seed plants. We have the angiosperm and gymnosperms. The gymnosperms are cone-bearing plants. We call the seeds naked because they're not enclosed inside of a fruit. And then you can see that the angiosperms have the seeds enclosed inside of a fruit. For the gymnosperms, there are 4 phyla, and this is an example of the cones. What you're looking at here, these are male cones. They are small and they're grouped in clusters, and the female cone has these scales. When the male cone releases pollen, which contains sperm, they get blown through the wind, and then the pollen kind of go in between these scales. And way deep down here is the opening for where the egg is. And then when it's fertilized, or sorry, when it's pollinated, then these scales will close up and fertilization will take place. But that's another chapter. There is only one phylum of angiosperms, and like I said, they are the only fruit-bearing plants, and they are also the flowering plants. So going through the gymnosperms first, the first phylum, Cycadophyta. These are commonly called cycads. These are very old species of plants that flourished during the ages of the dinosaurs. There's only about 100 species left today that grow in the tropics, and they are very slow growing. The main characteristic of the cycads is that they have very short, thick trunks, which you can't see here. I'll show you here in a second. But they have really large cones, which you can see here in the middle. And they're either male or female. So here's examples of cycads, these short, thick trunk, giant cones. These are also cycads. So you can see they're pretty short trees actually, and they really kind of remind you, see the giant cone in the middle? Kind of remind you of the dinosaur days. Okay, the next phylum is Ginkgophyta. These also, these are the ginkgos. They also flourished when the dinosaurs were around. There is only one species in the entire phylum left alive today, and that is the species Ginkgo biloba, which is native to China. And the ginkgo trees are actually really good because they can survive in a very highly polluted environment. And the weird thing, or I said the weird, but the unique thing about this phylum is that they are deciduous. And deciduous means that they lose their leaves. So you can see here in the middle, they lose their leaves at the end of the growing season. And that is very strange because all of the other phyla of gymnosperms are evergreen, which means they are green year round. You just think of Christmas trees, and their leaves are always green. They don't change color and they don't lose their leaves. Another unique thing about them is you can see here's the leaves. They look like little fans. And these are the fleshy seeds of the ginkgo, which look like berries, but they're not berries or fruit. So that's what makes ginkgo special. Next, Coniferophyta. These are collectively called conifers. These are the most commonly well-known types of gymnosperms. They include pine, cedar, redwood, fir, spruce, juniper, and cypress. They are really important sources of wood, paper, turpentine, resin, and Christmas trees, of course. If you've ever seen Jurassic Park, and the whole idea behind it was that the mosquito was trapped in amber. Amber is a fossilized resin that comes from conifers. So the insects gets trapped in this, basically a really thick sap, but it's a resin. And then the resin hardens and you get that preserved. The useful thing, I guess, about the juniper tree is that gin, the alcohol gin, is flavored with the juniper seeds. Again, they look like berries, but they are not. They are seeds. They're like fleshy seeds. So here's the pine tree, just to give you an idea of what these plants look like. Cedar is a very aromatic wood that's used in the inside of saunas. You have redwoods, which are huge trees. Useful or not.
So here we are in Redwood National Park, and we are in front of not just a big tree, we are in front of the big tree. Oh my gosh, look at that go. Is that nuts or what?
Very, very large trees. Okay, we get it. Big trees. And we have the Douglas fir. This is the most common Christmas tree. So it's a fir. Okay, so conifers are the evergreen trees that have needle-like flowers, needle-like leaves. They usually have both male and female cones. Like I said, this is a group of male cones. Female cones are going to be much larger and be singular. When the male cone releases the pollen, then they are no longer useful, so the cone falls off. And then here you can see the difference between male cones. I don't know why these are so small, these pictures. Let's make it bigger. The male cones versus the female cone. Kind of, it really reflects the difference between the size of sperm and the size of an egg. So the pollen is going to fall from the male cones or be carried by the wind. Like I said, they'll fall in between the scales, and then the female cone will close up, which protects the seed. The seed takes 1 to 2 years to mature. So growth in this phylum is very slow. Growth in the whole gymnosperm category is very slow. And then after the seeds are fully mature, then the cone will open again and they will be released. The last group of gymnosperm is Gnetophyta. These are also called gnetophytes. These have vascular systems that are more like angiosperms. Angiosperms have the most effective vascular system, which we'll talk about in the next chapter. And ephedra, I don't know if you've ever heard of that. I think it's one of the ingredients in yaba and speed and those kinds of drugs. That comes from this plant, ephedra. And finally, the one phylum of flowering plant, which is Anthophyta, which is not to be confused with Anthocerophyta, which is a bryophyte, a non-vascular plant. Anthophyta, this is the largest phylum, and it includes, like I said, the flowering plants that produce fruit. Angiosperms grow differently. Some of them are herbaceous plants, herbaceous meaning they're not woody. So the stem is going to be green and flexible. They have really big showy flowers. This is a picture of Rafflesia. This is, I think, the largest flower in the world. It can get up to 1 meter. Grass, yes, regular plain old grass is an angiosperm. It just depends on whether you cut it very often. I'll see if I can go out to the park in my Mubon. Sometimes they don't mow the lawn and you can actually see the flowers that are growing. I'll take a picture of that. Some of them are bushes or shrubs and some of them are vines. So there's a very, very diverse group of plants. And I don't think I want to get into that yet. So thus endeth the lesson.